I had 45 seconds before the dessert spoons hit the table and the bullets hit his chest. My hand shook just enough to smear the ballpoint ink as I folded the receipt into quarters. The paper felt thinner than tissue, like it might disintegrate before it reached him. Around me, the gilded lotus hummed with the low frequency of wealth, crystal against porcelain, muted laughter, the whisper of silk against leather booth seats. Outside, Chicago's winter wind howled against the floor-to-ceiling windows, but in here, everything was warm, too warm, suffocating. I approached table 1 like I was walking toward my own execution. Kang Min-Joon sat with his back to the glass wall, the city glittering behind him like a throne of lights. He looked like he'd been carved from marble, sharp jawline, black hair slicked back, a Tom Ford suit expensive enough to rival my entire year's rent. His hand rested on the table, fingers drumming a slow, predatory rhythm. Beside him, Costa leaned in close, whispering something that made her red lips curve into a smile. Her diamond earrings caught the candlelight, throwing fractured rainbows across the white tablecloth. She looked like a woman in love. She wasn't. 20 minutes ago, I'd heard her order his death. The wine cellar at the Gilded Lotus wasn't really a cellar. It was a temperature-controlled vault in the basement, all glass walls and soft lighting that made the bottles glow like jewels. I'd been sent down to grab a 2015 Barolo for table 7, threading my way past rows of Bordeaux and Burgundy when I heard voices. Female, sharp, speaking Italian. I froze between the Chiantis and the Brunellos, my hand still on the bottle I'd been reaching for. Sì, è al tavolo uno. Vicino al vetro. Yes. He's at table 1, by the glass. My Italian was restaurant level at best, enough to know when someone ordered panna cotta versus tiramisu, but I caught fragments. Table 1, the glass wall. Gli altri sono già in posizione. Uno al bar, tre vicino alla cucina. The others are already in position. 1 at the bar, 3 near the kitchen, and then she switched, her voice dropping to something that sounded like Russian, faster and sharper, like she was wrapping razor wire around her words. I should have announced myself, cleared my throat, made my presence known like a professional. Instead, I stood there, heart hammering, and listened. She then switched back to Italian. The bottle in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Avrai un colpo pulito appena si sistema. You'll have a clean shot as soon as he settles. My breath caught. The air in the wine cellar, climate controlled to exactly 55 degrees, suddenly felt arctic. She continued in that other language, something harsh and consonant-heavy that I couldn't parse, but the tone was unmistakable. This wasn't a conversation. It was a confirmation. A countdown. Heels clicked against the stone floor, moving toward the stairs. I pressed myself against the wine rack, praying the shadows and bottles would hide me. Through the gaps between $1,000 vintages, I caught a glimpse of her, tall, elegant, wearing a white dress that looked like it cost more than my nursing school tuition. Dark hair swept up, diamond earrings catching the light. Costa. The woman currently sitting at table 1, playing the role of loving fiancée to the man she'd just arranged to have killed. She disappeared up the stairs, her perfume lingering, something expensive and floral that now smelled like a funeral arrangement. I stood there for 10 seconds, 15, 20, waiting for my legs to remember how to work. When I finally climbed back up to the main floor, Barolo forgotten, my brain was sprinting through what I'd heard. Table 1, by the glass. 1 at the bar, 3 near the kitchen. Clean shot. I stepped back onto the restaurant floor, and everything clicked into focus with horrifying clarity. Table 1, corner booth. Kang Min-Joon and Costa. Chicago's most talked-about power couple. He was Korean mafia. Everyone knew it, even if no one said it out loud. She was Italian mob royalty. Their engagement had been society page news for months, a merger disguised as a romance, or maybe just a murder disguised as both. I scanned the restaurant with new eyes, my serving tray pressed against my chest like a shield. 1 man at the bar, mid-30s, dark suit, nursing a scotch he hadn't actually drunk in 20 minutes. He wasn't watching the basketball game on the screen. He was watching table 1. 3 men near the kitchen entrance. They'd been loitering for 15 minutes, menus open but never ordering. 2 of them had their backs to the wall. The third kept his hand inside his jacket. My heart kicked against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack bone. I looked back at table 1. At Kang Min-Joon, laughing at something Carolina said, completely unaware that the woman touching his arm had just orchestrated his execution. That in less than an hour, when the dessert course arrived and everyone was distracted by the flambéed, whatever the hell was on tonight's menu, 4 men were going to put bullets in him. I could walk away, clock out early, say I was sick, let whatever was about to happen just happen. Men like Kang Min-Joon didn't end up in my world by accident. He'd earned enemies. Maybe he deserved this. But then I thought about my father, lying in that hospital bed on the south side, hooked up to machines that beeped his life in steady intervals. I thought about every nurse who'd stayed late to hold his hand, every doctor who'd fought for him when insurance said no. I thought about mercy, unearned and freely given. I thought, I can't just let someone die. So I grabbed a receipt from my apron, clicked my pen, and wrote 7 words that would either save his life or end mine. My reflection in the wine glasses looked ghost pale as I made my way to table 1. Each step felt like walking through water, time stretching and contracting. I was hyper-aware of everything, the scratch of polyester against my skin, the squeak of my shoes on marble, the way Carolina's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "You're Glenfiddich, sir." My voice came out steady, professional, like I hadn't just overheard a murder plot, like my hands weren't shaking. I set the crystal glass down on the white tablecloth, neat and precise. The whiskey caught the candlelight, glowing amber. And then I did the thing that every server is trained never to do. I touched him, my thumb pressed against the back of his hand as I slid the folded receipt beneath his coaster. The contact lasted maybe half a second, a violation of every rule, every boundary between his world and mine. Kang Min-Joon's eyes snapped to mine. They were darker than I expected. Not cold, but calculating, the kind of eyes that saw through skin and bone straight into intention. His gaze held mine for a beat too long, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not attraction, but recognition, like looking into the eyes of a wild animal that could either let you pass or tear you apart. "Read it," I mouthed. "Please." His fingers curled around the receipt, palm covering it completely. "Is there a problem with the service, darling?" Carolina's voice cut through the moment, sweet and poisonous. Min-Joon's expression didn't change. He lifted his glass, took a slow sip of whiskey, and with his other hand, unfolded the note beneath the table where Carolina couldn't see. I stood there, tray clutched to my chest, watching his face for any reaction. Nothing. Not a flicker. Not a flinch. Just those dark eyes scanning the 7 words. "Your fiancé sold you out. They're in position." Then his jaw tightened. Imperceptible unless you were looking for it. The smallest tell. He knew. Min-Joon set his glass down with a soft clink that somehow cut through the ambient noise of the restaurant. When he spoke, his voice was smooth, controlled, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "I'd like to propose a toast." Carolina blinked, her smile flickering. "Now? We haven't even ordered dessert yet." "Now," he gestured to me without looking away from her. "Another glass for my fiancé." "The same." I hesitated, looking between them. Carolina's perfectly made-up face showed the first crack, a tightness around her eyes, a stiffness in her posture. "I already have wine, Min," she said, voice light but strained. "Then you'll have whiskey too." It wasn't a request. I walked back to the bar on autopilot, poured the second Glenfiddich with trembling hands, and returned. The restaurant continued around us. Laughter, conversation, the soft jazz playing over hidden speakers. Completely unaware that table 1 was a bomb waiting to detonate, I set the glass in front of Carolina. Her red nails gleamed as she reached for it, but Min-Joon's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "Let's switch," he said softly. "I want to drink from your glass, and you drink from mine." The temperature at the table dropped 10 degrees. Carolina's laugh came out forced. "That's weird, even for you." "Is it?" Min-Joon's smile was a razor. I thought couples in love did romantic things like that, sharing, trusting. He pushed his glass toward her, holding her gaze. "Or is there a reason you don't want to drink what I've been drinking?" The silence stretched. I stood there, frozen, watching Carolina's face cycle through emotions. Confusion, fear, fury, before settling on something carefully blank. "Of course not." She picked up his glass with a hand that trembled just slightly. "To loyalty, to loyalty." Min-Joon echoed, taking her wine glass. They drank. Nothing happened. The whiskey wasn't poisoned, but Carolina's hesitation had confirmed everything. Min-Joon set down the glass and looked directly at me. Really looked at me for the first time, taking in my name tag, my face, the fear I couldn't quite hide. Nia Brooks, he read slowly, his accent turning my name into something foreign and dangerous. Tell me, Nia, do you believe in fate? My throat closed. I'm not sure, sir. I didn't either. He leaned back in his seat, one arm draped casually over the booth. Until 45 seconds ago, Carolina's face went white, and that's when I realized I'd just started a war. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our little dark romance family stretch across cities, countries, and time zones. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling these dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. So find your quiet place, dim the lights, and get ready. Let's begin. The restaurant continued its expensive symphony around us. The delicate scrape of silver against porcelain, hushed conversations about stocks and summer homes, the jazz quartet in the corner playing something slow and mournful. But at table 1, time had frozen. Carolina's red nails gleamed against the white tablecloth as she reached for her wine glass, her movement suddenly mechanical. Min-Joon sat perfectly still, a predator assessing which direction his prey would bolt. Nia, he said my name again, tasting each syllable like he was learning a new language. How long have you worked here? My mouth went dry. 8 months, sir. And in those 8 months, how many assassination attempts have you witnessed? The question landed like a slap. Carolina's laugh came out too high, too forced. Min, darling, you're scaring the poor girl. She probably just saw someone suspicious and got nervous. Is that what happened, Nia? His eyes never left mine. They were obsidian in the candlelight, ancient and depthless. Did you just get nervous? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The receipt was still in his hand, my handwriting stark against the white paper. 7 words that had just painted a target on my back. A subtle shift rippled through the restaurant. One of the men near the kitchen entrance stood up, his hand sliding inside his jacket. At the bar, the man with the untouched scotch turned his body slightly, angling for a better view of our table. Min-Joon saw it too. I watched the calculation flash across his face. Cold, instant, lethal. I think, he said softly, standing in one fluid movement, we should discuss this somewhere more private. Carolina's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. We haven't had dessert yet. I've lost my appetite. He extracted himself from her grasp with surgical precision. Then he turned to me, and his expression shifted into something that made my blood run cold. Fury. Disgust, the mask of an angry customer about to destroy someone's night. His hand closed around my upper arm like a vice. You, he hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, spilled whiskey on a $12,000 suit. I hadn't. My tray had been empty, but the lie crystallized instantly, giving him a reason to manhandle me, to drag me away from the table without raising immediate alarm. I'm so sorry, sir. Sorry doesn't pay for custom tailoring. He yanked me forward, and I stumbled, my hip hitting the table edge. The violence in his grip was real enough to make me gasp, theatrical enough to make the other diners look away in secondhand embarrassment. He pulled me toward the kitchen entrance, moving fast. Behind us, I heard Carolina's voice, sharp with panic she was trying to disguise as irritation. Min, don't be ridiculous. Just send her home. We can. I'm going to speak to her manager. His voice cut through the restaurant like a blade. And then I'm going to have her fired. We were 10 feet from the kitchen doors. The 3 men who'd been loitering near the entrance shifted, hands moving inside jackets. I saw the calculation in their eyes. Was this part of the plan? Was Min-Joon just being his usual tyrannical self? Or had he figured it out? 5 feet. Min-Joon's grip on my arm shifted, his fingers finding the pulse point at my wrist. He pressed down, and I felt my heartbeat hammering against his thumb. When we go through those doors, he whispered, his mouth so close to my ear that anyone watching would think he was berating me. You run left. Don't stop. Don't look back. The kitchen doors swung open, and the lights went out. Darkness swallowed, the gilded lotus whole, not gradual, not flickering, absolute and instant, like someone had thrown a blanket over the sun. The jazz quartet died mid-note. Crystal glasses hit the floor in cascading crashes. A woman screamed. Min-Joon moved. 1 second, I was standing upright. The next, I was being propelled forward through the kitchen doors with enough force to knock the air from my lungs. The emergency lighting kicked in, dim red bulbs that turned everything into a nightmare landscape of shadows and blood-colored light. The kitchen was chaos incarnate. Chefs shouted in a babble of languages: Spanish, French, Korean. As pans clattered and something heavy hit the floor, through the crimson haze, I saw figures moving with purpose that had nothing to do with cooking. "Left!" Min-Joon's voice cut through the noise. I ran. My cheap work shoes skidded on the slick tile as I bolted past the prep stations, past the industrial ovens radiating heat like open furnaces. Behind me came the sound of impact. Flesh on flesh. A grunt of pain. Something metallic skittering across the floor. I risked a glance back. Min-Joon fought like violence was a language he'd spoken since birth. A man in a white chef's coat lunged at him with a blade that was definitely not for dicing vegetables. Min-Joon caught his wrist, twisted, and the knife clattered away. He drove his elbow into the man's throat with surgical precision, then spun him into a second attacker hard enough that both men went down in a tangle of limbs. 3 more came through the swinging doors. Not the men from the dining room. These were kitchen staff, or people wearing kitchen whites as camouflage. One of them spotted me. "The girl!" he shouted, in accented English. "Grab the girl!" Terror shot through me like electricity. I grabbed the first thing my hand found, a pan of hot oil sitting on the range. And without thinking, without hesitating, I hurled it at him. The oil caught him across the face and chest. His screams were inhuman, primal. He dropped to his knees, clawing at his burning skin. The smell hit me, scorched flesh and hot metal, and my stomach tried to climb up my throat. "Move, Nia." Min-Joon was suddenly beside me, his hand finding the small of my back, propelling me forward again. Blood streaked his white dress shirt, and I couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. We burst through another set of doors into the dry storage area. 50-pound bags of rice and flour were stacked floor to ceiling, creating a maze of narrow passages. The red emergency lighting barely penetrated here, leaving pools of absolute darkness between the shelves. Footsteps thundered behind us. Voices shouted in Italian. Min-Joon pulled me into a gap between the shelving units, pressing us both flat against the concrete wall. The space was so narrow that my chest was crushed against his, my face buried in the blood-stained fabric of his shirt. He smelled like expensive cologne and copper, and something darker. Adrenaline, maybe, or the particular scent of violence. His heart hammered against my forehead, fast but steady, not panicked, just ready. "How many?" I whispered, my breath fogging against his chest. "Too many." His voice was barely audible, his lips brushing the top of my head as he spoke. The kitchen was full of them. This wasn't just a hit. This was an occupation. 3 men entered the storage area, their shadows stretching grotesquely across the walls in the red light. They moved methodically, checking between the shelves, weapons drawn. Not guns, knives and something that looked like a garrote. They wanted this quiet. Min-Joon's arm wrapped around my waist, holding me so still I wasn't sure I was breathing. His other hand moved to his ankle, and when it came back up, there was a gun in it. Small, black, lethal. The nearest man was 5 feet away. 4, 3. I could see his face now in the crimson glow. Young, maybe mid-20s, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He was looking right at our hiding spot. Time stretched. I felt every beat of my heart, every molecule of air moving in and out of my lungs. Min-Joon's finger rested on the trigger, his body coiled like a spring beneath expensive fabric. The man took another step forward. Then somewhere in the kitchen, glass shattered, followed by shouting in Korean. The man's head whipped toward the sound. He gestured to his companions, and all 3 of them moved back toward the kitchen doors. Min-Joon waited until their footsteps faded before exhaling. The breath moved through his chest, expanding and contracting against mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just stood there in the darkness, pressed together by necessity and survival, while chaos raged around us. "Your people?" I whispered. "My people." He pulled back slightly, putting an inch of space between us. In the red light, his face looked carved from stone, all sharp angles and shadows. A cut above his eyebrow leaked blood down the side of his face, making him look like something from a nightmare. They'll create a distraction, but we need to move now. The back exit is compromised, a voice said from behind us. We spun. A man stood blocking the path to the rear door, backlit by emergency lighting. He was massive, easily 6'4", built like he'd been carved from a mountain, and he was pointing a gun directly at my head. On, Min-Joon said, and there was something in his voice I couldn't read. Not fear. Recognition, maybe. Or betrayal. Sorry, boss. The big man's expression was carefully neutral. Orders from the top. Junseo. The name came out like a curse. Your brother sends his regards, and his regrets. Nothing personal. On's finger tightened on the trigger. Min-Joon moved faster than physics should have allowed. He grabbed a bag of rice from the nearest shelf and hurled it at An's head. The bag exploded on impact, sending white grains everywhere, creating a snow globe effect in the red light. An fired blind, the shot going wide, the report deafening in the enclosed space. Then I was on the floor, Min-Joon's body covering mine as bullets punched through rice bags and sent white powder cascading down like rain. Above us, wood splintered. Metal pinged. The world was gunfire and screaming, and the weight of Min-Joon's body pressing me into the cold concrete. Stay down, he growled against my ear. Then he was rolling off me, returning fire. The muzzle flash from his gun lit up the storage room in strobing bursts of white light. An went down. Not dead, but hit. He clutched his shoulder, weapon clattering away. 2 more men came through the kitchen doors, and suddenly it was a storm of bullets. I pressed myself flat against the floor, hands over my head, rice grains digging into my palms as they rained down. Something hot grazed my upper arm. Not a bullet, but close enough. The shock of pain made me gasp. The back door, now. Min-Joon's hand found mine, yanking me to my feet. We ran, stumbling through rice that crunched beneath our shoes like snow. The back door loomed ahead. Metal, industrial, marked with a glowing green exit sign. Min-Joon hit it at full speed, using his shoulder like a battering ram. The door exploded open, and then we were outside. Chicago winter slammed into us like a freight train. The temperature had to be below 0. The wind screaming through the alley with enough force to steal the breath from my lungs. Snow swirled in frantic spirals, turning the world into a whiteout that was the polar opposite of the restaurant's golden warmth. My server uniform, a thin polyester blouse and slacks designed for climate-controlled elegance, not survival, was criminally inadequate. Within seconds, the wind cut through to my skin, turning my sweat ice cold. My teeth started chattering so hard I bit my tongue. Min-Joon didn't slow down. He pulled me down the alley, our shoes crunching through dirty snow and ice. Behind us, the back door banged open again, voices shouting. A black SUV sat at the alley's mouth, engine running, exhaust creating ghosts in the freezing air. Min-Joon wrenched open the back door and physically threw me inside. I landed on leather seats that smelled like new car and gun oil. He dove in after me, slamming the door. Drive, he barked in Korean to the man behind the wheel. The SUV lurched forward, tires spinning on ice before finding purchase. Through the rear window, I saw figures spilling out of the restaurant's back door. Too many to count. Weapons raised. One of them aimed at our vehicle. The rear windshield spiderwebbed but didn't break. Bulletproof glass. The sound of impact was dull, distant, like someone tapping on a fish tank. We sped away, leaving the gilded Lotus behind in a blur of snow and muzzle flash. Inside the SUV, silence descended. The only sounds were our ragged breathing and the whisper of tires on icy pavement. Min-Joon leaned forward, speaking rapid Korean to the driver. Instructions, coordinates, I couldn't tell. Blood dripped from the cut above his eyebrow, spattering on the leather seat. I looked down at myself. Rice grains clung to my clothes and hair like confetti. My arm burned where something had grazed it, the sleeve of my blouse torn and spotted with blood. My hands trembled, not from cold anymore, but from pure adrenaline crash. You're hurt, Min-Joon said, his attention snapping back to me. His English returned, slightly accented but perfect. I'm fine. You're bleeding. So are you. He wiped blood from his eyebrow with the back of his hand, barely acknowledging it. Then his fingers were on my arm, examining the wound with a clinical detachment that somehow felt more intimate than concern. His touch was surprisingly gentle, considering those same hands had just killed multiple people with ruthless efficiency. "Graze," he pronounced. "You were lucky." "Lucky?" I laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. "I just burned a man's face off and got shot at in a rice storage room. That's your definition of lucky? You're alive." His dark eyes met mine, and something shifted in them, a microscopic crack in the ice. "That's the only definition that matters." The driver said something in Korean. Min-Joon responded, then turned back to me. "We're going somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't look for us tonight." "They? You mean Carolina? And whoever Junseo is?" His jaw tightened at the name. "My half-brother. Older by 2 years, meaner by a lifetime." I thought he was dead. Apparently I was misinformed. And Carolina? Was his from the beginning, I suspect. The whole engagement was a setup. A way to get close enough to kill me without raising suspicion. He said it with such cold pragmatism, like discussing a failed business transaction rather than the woman he'd been planning to marry. The pregnancy was probably his too. Insurance, in case she couldn't pull off the hit. A Kang heir to legitimize his claim to the family empire. The casual way he dissected the betrayal made my skin prickle. This was a man who saw threats and contingencies, who measured relationships in terms of leverage and risk, and I had just become a variable in his deadly equation. "Where are you taking me?" The question came out smaller than I intended. Min-Joon studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the passing streetlights. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost kind, which somehow made it more terrifying. Home. Home was not a word I would have used. Prison, maybe. Fortress, definitely. The stronghold sat on a promontory overlooking Lake Michigan, surrounded by walls that looked designed to keep out armies. As we passed through 2 separate security checkpoints, both requiring retinal scans and codes that the driver rattled off in Korean, I watched the safe, familiar world of Chicago disappear behind us, replaced by something colder and more absolute. The mansion itself was pure brutalism, concrete and glass, all harsh angles and uncompromising lines. No warmth, no softness, just power rendered in architecture. Floodlights illuminated the perimeter, turning the falling snow into a blizzard of white static against the darkness. We pulled into an underground garage that looked like it could house a small military. The SUV's engine cut, and suddenly the silence was oppressive. Min-Joon exited the vehicle with the fluid grace of someone who'd never questioned his right to command space. I followed on legs that felt detached from my body, adrenaline finally giving way to bone-deep exhaustion. The elevator required a keycard and a fingerprint scan. The ride up was smooth, silent, the LED display counting floors in Korean characters I couldn't read. Min-Joon stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, a sharp contrast to the cold concrete surrounding us. "You're shaking," he observed. "I'm freezing." He shrugged off his ruined suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It was still warm from his body, and it smelled like him, that expensive cologne, now mixed with gunpowder and adrenaline and blood. I pulled it tighter, hating how good it felt, hating how my body responded to even this small gesture of care from a man who was essentially my captor. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Not a hallway, not a foyer, just straight into a living space that was more museum than home. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake, black water stretching to an invisible horizon. The furniture was minimal, expensive, arranged with geometric precision. Everything was gray: concrete floors, steel fixtures, slate-colored upholstery. Even the art on the walls was monochromatic, abstract slashes of charcoal on white canvas. It was beautiful the way a knife is beautiful, cold and sharp and dangerous. 3 men waited in the living room, all wearing black tactical gear, all armed. They straightened when Min-Joon entered, speaking in rapid Korean. "Reports." I assumed, from the way Min-Joon's expression darkened with each sentence. He barked orders, dismissive and absolute, and 2 of the men left immediately. The third approached me, holding out his hand. "Phone." I blinked. "What?" "Your phone," Min-Joon translated, his voice flat. "Give it to him." "Why?" "Because I said so." The casualness of his dominance sent a spike of anger through my exhaustion. "I need to call my father. Tell him I'm okay. He'll be worried." "Your father is fine." Min-Joon moved to a sideboard, poured amber liquid into a crystal glass. "I had my people check on him 20 minutes ago. He's asleep in his hospital bed. completely unaware that his daughter just participated in a shootout. That doesn't mean I don't need to. Phone Nia. He didn't raise his voice, but the command in it was absolute. Now. I wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him to go to hell, that he had no right to strip me of my one connection to the outside world. But the man in tactical gear was still waiting, hand outstretched, and Min-Joon was watching me with those obsidian eyes that saw everything, calculated everything. I pulled my phone from my apron pocket, surprised it had survived the chaos, and placed it in the man's palm. He took it without a word and left. The elevator doors closed behind him, and suddenly it was just Min-Joon and me in all that gray space. "You can't keep me here," I said, trying to sound defiant and not terrified. "Can't I?" He took a slow sip of his drink, regarding me over the rim of the glass. "What exactly is your alternative, Nia? Walk out into the snow and hope the Costa family doesn't find you? Go home to your apartment and wait for someone to put a bullet through your door? I didn't do anything wrong. You saved my life. In the world I live in, that makes you either very valuable or very dangerous, sometimes both." He set down his glass and moved toward me, each step measured and predatory. "The people who tried to kill me tonight don't care that you were just an innocent bystander. All they care about is that you cost them money, power, and reputation. And they will want to know exactly how much you saw, how much you heard, and whether you're going to become a problem." He stopped inches away, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see the flecks of gold hidden in his irises, the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the way his pulse beat in his throat despite his calm exterior. "So no," he continued softly. "You can't leave. Not tonight. Not until I figure out how to keep you alive. By making me your prisoner? By making you my responsibility." Something flickered across his face. Too fast to read, too complex to name. "There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're very brave for someone who served appetizers 2 hours ago, and you're very arrogant for someone who almost died tonight." The smile widened fractionally. "Almost doesn't count in my business. You either survive or you don't. There's no participation trophy for nearly getting assassinated. Despite everything. The fear, the exhaustion, the complete insanity of my situation." I almost laughed. The sound died in my throat when his hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw with unexpected gentleness. He tilted my face toward the light, examining the cut on my arm, the rice grains still tangled in my hair, the way my whole body trembled despite his jacket wrapped around me. "You need to clean up," he said. "And eat something. Then we'll talk." "Talk about what?" "About why you saved me. About what happens next. About—" He stopped, his thumb pressed against the pulse point in my neck, feeling my heartbeat jackrabbit beneath his touch. "About why you're looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you can't decide if you want to kill me or kiss me." The accusation hung in the air between us, dangerous and true. Because he was right. Somewhere in the chaos and adrenaline and terror, something had shifted. Something that had nothing to do with gratitude or Stockholm Syndrome and everything to do with the way his body had covered mine on that storage room floor, the way he'd killed for me without hesitation, the way he was looking at me now like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "I don't want to do either," I lied. "Liar." But he stepped back, releasing me, and the absence of his touch felt like a physical loss. "Third door on the right. There's a bathroom, clean clothes in the closet. Take your time." I fled. There was no other word for it. I walked quickly toward the hallway he'd indicated, feeling his gaze tracking me the entire way. The third door opened into a guest suite that was larger than my entire apartment. King bed with slate gray linens, sitting area with a view of the lake, and a bathroom that looked like something from an architectural magazine. I locked the door behind me, then immediately felt foolish. If Min-Joon wanted to come in, a lock wouldn't stop him. Nothing would stop him. This was his fortress, his kingdom, and I was just a subject he hadn't decided what to do with yet. The bathroom mirror showed me a stranger. My hair had come loose from its practical bun, wild curls falling around my face and studded with rice grains. Blood had dried on my sleeve, brown now instead of red. My eyes looked too large, too dark, the eyes of someone who just watched people die. I stripped off my ruined uniform and stepped into the shower. The water came out scalding hot immediately. No waiting, no sputtering, just perfect temperature at the turn of a dial. It felt obscene, this casual luxury, while my father lay in a hospital bed downtown hooked to machines that counted his heartbeats like coins. I stood under the spray and let myself cry. Just for a minute. Just long enough to let the terror and confusion and bone-deep exhaustion escape in hiccuping sobs that the water washed away. Then I stopped, because crying wouldn't change anything. I was here. Min-Joon was right. Going home would be suicide. And somewhere in this city, people who wanted me dead were regrouping, planning, waiting. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that felt like clouds, I found the clothes Min-Joon had mentioned. Not designer suits or uncomfortable dresses, but simple, practical things. Sweatpants, a thermal shirt, thick socks, men's sizes, but someone had left a belt. I dressed quickly, towel-dried my hair, and stared at my reflection again. Still a stranger, but a cleaner one. Less terrified. More determined. I was leaving the bathroom when I heard it. Voices from the main room, speaking in rapid Korean. Min-Joon's voice, controlled and cold. And then another voice, younger and crackling through what sounded like a speakerphone. The conversation was tense, punctuated by long silences. I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. The Korean was too fast for me to catch any actual words, but I understood tone. The person on the phone was taunting him, and Min-Joon was listening with the patience of someone planning murder. Then I heard a name that stopped my heart. Junseo. And another. Carolina. And a third that I understood without translation. Pregnant. The call ended with a sharp command from Min-Joon. Something shattered. Glass hitting a wall. Probably. Then silence. I waited a full minute before opening the door. Min-Joon stood by the windows, one hand braced against the glass, looking out at the lake. He'd changed clothes too. Black pants, black shirt, still barefoot. The cut above his eyebrow had been cleaned and bandaged. He didn't turn when I entered, but his voice carried across the space. Junseo sends his regards, and his regrets. I moved closer, careful not to startle him. Your brother, half-brother, son of my father's first marriage, before he married my mother. Junseo was the heir, the golden child, until he made the mistake of thinking he could steal from the family without consequences. Min-Joon's reflection in the glass looked like something carved from stone. My father had him exiled to China 5 years ago. Everyone thought he'd died there. Wishful thinking, apparently. And Carolina was his lover long before she became my fiancée. The pregnancy is his. Genetic testing confirmed it months ago. She'd done the test at barely 6 weeks, early enough for it to go unnoticed, early enough for Min-Joon to confirm the child wasn't his. I knew. I just didn't know he was still alive to orchestrate a coup. The clinical way he dissected it made my chest ache. You knew she was pregnant with another man's child and you were still going to marry her. It's business, Nia. Power, alliances, territory. Love has nothing to do with it. He finally turned to face me, and his expression was carved from ice. But betrayal? That's personal. And what they did tonight, killing my men, trying to kill me, putting you in danger, that demands a response. What kind of response? His smile was a blade. The kind that ends with my brother's empire burning and Carolina in the ground beside him. The casual promise of violence should have terrified me, should have sent me running back to that locked bedroom, should have made me beg him to let me go, to leave me out of whatever war he was planning. Instead, I heard myself ask, "What do you need me to do?" Min-Joon's expression shifted. Surprise, calculation, something that might have been respect. You want to help me? I want my father safe. I want to go home without looking over my shoulder. And I stopped, surprised by the truth of what came next. I want them to pay for what they did tonight, for the people they killed, for the life you would have lost if I hadn't been in that wine cellar at exactly the wrong time, or exactly the right time. He moved closer, each step deliberate, until we were standing in the same charged space we'd occupied earlier. You're not what I expected. Nia Brooks. What did you expect? Tears, hysterics, demands to be released. His hand came up, fingers brushing a damp curl away from my face. Not offers to join a war against the Italian mob. I'm full of surprises. So I'm learning. His thumb traced the line of my jaw, the touch feather-light but possessive. But understand this. If you stay, if you help me, there's no going back to your old life. The moment you walked up to that table with a note, You stepped into my world. And my world doesn't let people go. The warning should have scared me, should have made me recoil, demand my phone back, demand he call me a cab, demand anything except this dark pull toward a man who'd just promised wholesale slaughter with the casualness of someone ordering coffee. But I'd watched him fight tonight, watched him kill without hesitation to protect me, to protect himself, watched him move through violence like it was choreographed, like his body knew the steps by heart. And I'd felt something in that storage room, pressed between his body and the concrete floor, while bullets flew overhead. Not just fear, not just adrenaline, but recognition, like my soul had been waiting my entire life to meet someone just as trapped by circumstances, just as desperate to survive, just as willing to do terrible things for the people they loved. Then I guess I'm not going back, I whispered. His eyes darkened with something that might have been triumph, might have been desire, might have been the recognition that we were both walking into something we couldn't control. No, he agreed softly. I guess you're not. I woke to the sound of alarms screaming through the concrete fortress. The bedroom was still dark, but red emergency lights strobed through the windows, turning everything into a horror movie nightmare. I bolted upright, heart already hammering before my brain fully processed what was happening. The door slammed open. Min-Joon filled the frame, no longer barefoot but dressed in full tactical gear, a gun in each hand. His face was carved from fury. Get up. Now. I stumbled out of bed, still wearing the borrowed sweatpants and thermal shirt. What's happening? We're compromised. He grabbed my wrist, dragging me toward the door. They found us. That's impossible. We just got here. Apparently not impossible enough. We were moving fast through the penthouse, his grip on my wrist bruising. Other men in tactical gear appeared from doorways, speaking rapid Korean, weapons raised. Min-Joon barked orders, then pulled me into the elevator. The descent felt eternal. Min-Joon stood rigid beside me, jaw clenched, fury radiating off him in waves. When the doors opened into the garage, chaos greeted us. SUVs being loaded, men running, someone shouting coordinates. How did they find us? I asked, my voice small in all that controlled panic. Min-Joon didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on something across the garage. A man in a white coat holding what looked like a tablet, pointing at a screen and speaking urgently in Korean. Then Min-Joon's gaze swung to me, and what I saw there froze my blood. Suspicion, cold, calculating suspicion. You, he said softly, and that softness was more terrifying than any shout. You led them here. What? No, Search her. The order cracked like a whip. 2 men appeared, hands professionally impersonal as they patted me down. I stood there, humiliated and terrified, while they checked every pocket, every seam, looking for, what? A tracking device? A phone I'd somehow hidden? Clear, one of them reported in English. Then how? Min-Joon grabbed my shoulders, and his grip was iron. How did they find us, Nia? Who did you call? What did you do? Nothing. I swear, I didn't do anything. Tears burned my eyes, rage and fear in equal measure. You took my phone, remember? You locked me in a bedroom. What exactly do you think I could have done? The man with the tablet approached, speaking urgently in Korean. He held up the screen, showing some kind of GPS map with a blinking red dot. Min-Joon's eyes narrowed, then widened fractionally. He looked at me, then at the tablet, then back at me. When did you last see your father? The non sequitur threw me. Yesterday. Why? Did you pick up his medication? Yes, from the pharmacy on 42nd Street. I picked it up on my lunch break today because... Understanding crashed over me like ice water. Oh my God. Min-Joon was already moving, pulling me toward one of the SUVs. Get in. Now. What does my father's medication have to do with... everything? He shoved me into the back seat, then slid in beside me. The driver took off before Min-Joon even closed the door. The insulin you picked up yesterday. It was tagged. They put a tracker in the packaging, betting you'd have it with you or nearby when things went down. But I didn't bring it here. It's at home, in my apartment. I stopped. Isn't it? The man with the tablet was in the front passenger seat. He turned, holding up an evidence bag. Inside was a small box. Pharmaceutical packaging with my father's name printed on the label. My father's insulin. Your purse, Min-Joon said flatly. It was in the car from the restaurant. The insulin was in your purse. Memory crashed back. grabbing my bag from my locker during my break, the insulin box I'd picked up during my lunch hour, planning to drop it off at the hospital after my shift. I'd completely forgotten about it in the chaos of the night. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I swear, I didn't know." The Costas did. Min-Joon's jaw was clenched so tight I could see muscles jumping beneath his skin. "They tagged the medication days ago, anticipating you might become a loose end, because you'd witnessed something. A meeting maybe. A conversation. Even before tonight. They were covering contingencies. The GPS tracker in the insulin box. The Costas tracking my movements. And I'd led them straight to Min-Joon's safe house like a bloodhound following a scent trail I couldn't even see. "I'm sorry," I said, and the words felt pathetically inadequate. "I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to." Min-Joon laughed. But it was a broken sound, edged with something darker. "Do you have any idea how many people are dead right now because you didn't mean to? How many of my men were in that building when the breach happened?" I said I was sorry. "Sorry doesn't bring them back." He grabbed my wrist, yanking me forward, and I saw the gun in his other hand. Black, heavy, pointed at the floor, but oh so close to not being pointed at the floor. The driver said something sharp in Korean. A warning. A plea. Min-Joon ignored him. "Give me one reason," he said softly. "Why I shouldn't put a bullet in you right now." Terror locked my throat. This was it. This was how it ended. Not in a restaurant shootout or a storage room brawl, but in the back of a speeding SUV because I'd been too stupid, too naive to realize I was carrying my own tracking device. But beneath the terror was something else. Something angry and defiant and tired of being afraid. Because my father didn't ask for any of this. The words exploded out of me, raw and jagged. Because he's lying in a hospital bed right now, with machines breathing for him, and if I die, he doesn't get his next dose. Because you can kill me, Min-Joon, but that doesn't solve your problem. That doesn't stop your brother. That doesn't bring your men back. His finger rested on the trigger. "It makes me feel better." "Then do it." I grabbed his wrist, pressing the barrel against my chest, feeling the cold metal through the thin thermal shirt. "Put the gun against my heart and pull the trigger, but before you do, send someone to 42nd Street, room 304. Make sure James Brooks gets his insulin, because he's the only innocent person in this entire mess." We stared at each other, both breathing hard, the gun pressed between us like a promise or a threat or both. Outside the SUV windows, Chicago blurred past. Streetlights, storefronts, the ordinary world continuing while my life hung suspended in the space of a trigger pull. The man with the tablet spoke again, urgent and pleading. Min-Joon's eyes never left mine. "What did he say?" I whispered. "He said the tracker's been destroyed. We're clean now. No one's following us." "Good." He also said I'm an idiot if I kill the only witness who can identify Carolina's voice, confirm the details of the plot, testify if this ever goes legal. Am I going to testify? "You're going to do whatever keeps you alive." He lowered the gun slowly, and the absence of its pressure against my chest felt like I could finally breathe. "And what keeps you alive is being useful to me. Then use me." The words came out stronger than I felt. "Stop waving that gun around and use me." I heard Carolina in that wine cellar. I heard names, times, locations. "I can tell you everything if you stop threatening to blow my head off long enough to listen." Something shifted in his expression. The rage banking slightly, calculation returning. He released my wrist, and I saw the marks his fingers had left, red impressions that would bloom into bruises by morning. "Your father," he said quietly. "The hospital on 42nd Street. "Yes." Min-Joon pulled out his phone, spoke in rapid Korean. I heard my father's name, heard the address, heard what sounded like detailed medical instructions. When he hung up, his eyes found mine again. "I've sent a team. They'll make sure he gets his medication, around-the-clock care, the best doctor's money can buy." Relief hit me so hard my vision blurred. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," he gestured to the driver, who nodded and changed course. "I bought his medical debt 3 months ago. The hospital he's in? It's mine. Has been for years. Money laundering, shell companies, the usual." The relief curdled into something colder. "What?" "I own the building. I own the equipment keeping him alive. I own his debt, his treatment, his next breath." Min-Joon's expression was carved from ice, which means I own you, Nia. Not because I'm cruel, but because that's how leverage works in my world. The truth settled over me like a weight. He'd saved my father not out of kindness but out of strategy, keeping me compliant, keeping me grateful, keeping me exactly where he needed me. "You bastard," I whispered. "Yes, he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. But I'm the bastard keeping your father alive, so perhaps save the moral outrage for someone who cares." I wanted to hit him, wanted to claw at that perfect face, make him bleed the way he'd just made my hope bleed. But he was right. Hating him didn't change the math. My father's life was in his hands, literally and figuratively. The SUV pulled into an underground parking structure, different from the first, more industrial. We exited into a building that felt temporary, functional, a safe house, not a home. Min-Joon led me to a second-floor room with a single bed, a chair, and bars on the windows. Not quite a cell, but close enough. "Stay here," he ordered. "Someone will bring food. Don't try to leave." "Or what? You'll kill my father?" He paused in the doorway, his back to me. "No, I'll kill you. And then your father dies anyway when the machines get unplugged because there's no one left to pay his bills." The door closed. A lock clicked. I stood in the middle of that bare room and felt the full weight of my situation crash down. I was trapped. My father was a bargaining chip, and the man I'd saved tonight had just revealed himself to be exactly what everyone probably assumed he was. A monster who measured lives in terms of utility and discarded them when they stopped being useful. I should have let him die in that restaurant, but I hadn't. And now I had to live with that choice, and with him, and with the knowledge that every breath my father took was currency in a debt I could never repay. I sank onto the bed, buried my face in my hands, and tried very hard not to cry. I failed. I must have fallen asleep eventually, exhaustion winning out over fear and anger. When I woke, gray light filtered through the barred windows, and someone had left a tray of food on the chair. Rice, soup, tea, all cold now. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, then sat staring at those bars until the light shifted from gray to pale gold. The lock clicked around noon. Min-Joon entered carrying a first aid kit, his expression unreadable. He'd changed again. Simple black pants. A gray Henley that made his eyes look even darker. The bandage above his eyebrow was gone, revealing a thin cut that would probably scar. "How's your arm?" he asked, as if he hadn't threatened to kill me 12 hours ago. "Fine. Let me see." I said, "It's fine." He crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed my wrist, and pushed up my sleeve before I could protest. The graze from last night had scabbed over, angry red at the edges but not infected. He examined it with clinical detachment, then opened the first aid kit. "I can do it myself," I said. "Sit still." His fingers were surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the wound with antiseptic that burned. I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from wincing, refusing to give him the satisfaction. When he applied a new bandage, his touch lingered for a moment on the bruises his own grip had left earlier. "I shouldn't have grabbed you like that," he said quietly. "In the car." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was closer than I'd expected. "You thought I betrayed you. I don't react well to betrayal." "Apparently." I pulled my arm back, putting space between us. "Is that what happened with your brother? He betrayed you, so your father exiled him." Min-Joon's jaw tightened. Junso stole from the family. $2 million in product, sold to a rival gang. My father gave him a choice, exile or execution. Junseo chose exile and disappeared into China. We thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. Clearly. He stood, pacing to the window. The bars cast striped shadows across his face. He's been planning this for years, building alliances, turning my own people against me, seducing Carolina into his scheme, and I was blind to all of it. You can't blame yourself for trusting your fiancée. I didn't trust her. I barely knew her. The engagement was arranged. Kang family money and connections for Costa family territory and soldiers. A business merger with a wedding cake. He turned to face me, and his expression was hollow. That's what my world is, Nia. Transactions disguised as relationships. Marriages that are really just hostile takeovers. Love is a liability I can't afford. The bitterness in his voice made something in my chest ache. That sounds lonely. Lonely is safe. Lonely doesn't get you killed. Lonely also doesn't give you a reason to survive. He studied me for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Is that why you saved me? Because you thought I needed a reason? I saved you because letting someone die when I could prevent it felt worse than the risk of trying, even though that risk put you here? Locked in a room? Dependent on a monster who owns your father's life support? I don't think you're a monster." His laugh was sharp. "Then you're dangerously naive. Or maybe you're not as monstrous as you want me to believe." I stood, moving closer until only a few feet separated us. Monsters don't tend to their captives' wounds. They don't make sure dying men get their medication. They don't hesitate with the trigger when someone gives them permission to pull it. I was angry. That doesn't make me good. No. But the fact that you're standing here right now, having this conversation instead of leaving me to rot, suggests you're not entirely evil either. The silence stretched between us, heavy with things neither of us knew how to name. Outside, I could hear city sounds, traffic, sirens, the ordinary chaos of Chicago continuing, while we stood frozen in this moment. "Your father," Min-Joon said finally. "I had my people move him to a private suite. Better equipment, better doctors, round-the-clock care, the kindness of it, or the strategic manipulation, I couldn't tell which, made my throat tight. Why? Because you were right. He's innocent in this. And because," he trailed off, looking uncomfortable with whatever he'd been about to say. "Because what?" "Because you asked me to. And I find I have a difficult time saying no to you." The confession hung in the air between us, dangerous and electric. This close, I could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the shadow of sleeplessness under his eyes. He looked almost human, almost vulnerable, almost like someone who needed saving just as much as I did. "Let me see him," I said softly. "My father, let me visit him, make sure he's okay. And I'll tell you everything I heard in that wine cellar. Every word Carolina said, every name, every detail." Min-Joon's eyes narrowed. "You're bargaining with me? You're the one who said leverage is everything in your world. So here's my leverage. I have information you need, and you have access to the person I love most. Seems like a fair trade." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're learning. I'm a fast learner, so I'm noticing." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then pocketed it again. "Done. A car will take you to the hospital this afternoon. My people will accompany you for your safety. You mean to make sure I don't run?" "That too." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Nia, I'm glad you were in that wine cellar. I'm glad you wrote that note, and I'm glad you're too stubborn to stay afraid of me. I am afraid of you, but you're here anyway. That takes a particular kind of courage." His gaze held mine, intense and unreadable. "Or a particular kind of madness. I haven't decided which yet." The door closed behind him. But this time, the lock didn't click. I stared at that unlocked door for a long time, weighing my options. I could leave, walk out, find a phone, call the police, try to disappear into witness protection or whatever they offered people who'd witnessed mob hits. But Min-Joon was right. The Costas wouldn't stop looking for me, and leaving meant abandoning my father to machines that would get unplugged the moment I became more trouble than I was worth. So I stayed. Not because I had to, but because leaving would mean losing the only family I had left, and because some small, traitorous part of me wanted to understand the man who'd held a gun to my chest one moment and bandaged my wounds the next. The man who'd built his life on violence but hesitated when given permission to use it on me. The man who was lonely and broken and fighting a war he didn't seem to want to win, just survive. Late afternoon arrived, and true to his word, Min-Joon had a car waiting. 2 guards accompanied me. Silent, professional, armed. The drive to the hospital was quiet, the city passing by outside the windows like a movie I was no longer part of. The private suite Min-Joon had moved my father to was on the top floor, corner room, with views of the city and equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction film. My father lay in the bed, exactly as I'd left him, gray-haired and thin, chest rising and falling with mechanical precision, monitors tracking every heartbeat. He'd been in a medically induced coma for weeks, the doctors unsure if he would ever wake. I pulled a chair close and took his hand. It was warm, but there was no answering squeeze, no flicker of recognition, just the steady beep of machines and the whisper of the ventilator breathing for him. "Hey, Daddy," I whispered. "I'm sorry I haven't visited in a few days. Things got complicated. Complicated." What an absurd understatement for watching people die, for being held at gunpoint, for falling into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I told him about the restaurant, leaving out the violence, Told him about meeting someone who reminded me of him. Stubborn, proud, trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Told him I was trying to do the right thing, even when the right thing was terrifying. And I promised him I'd get us both out of this. Somehow. When I finally left, the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of blood and gold. Min-Joon was waiting in the lobby, hands in his pockets, looking like any other visitor rather than the crime lord he was. "How is he?" he asked. "The same. But the equipment you provided, it's helping. The doctor said his vitals are more stable than they've been in months." "Good." He fell into step beside me as we walked to the car. "Now, your turn. Tell me everything you heard in that wine cellar." So I did. The Italian phrases, the timeline, the locations, the switch to that other language. "Russian," he confirmed. The specific references to the bar, the kitchen, the sniper position, every detail I could remember, I gave him. Min-Joon listened without interrupting, his expression darkening with each revelation. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Junso's been planning this for at least a year," he said finally. "Maybe longer. The level of detail, the coordination, that's not something you throw together in a few months. What are you going to do?" His smile was cold and sharp as a blade. "I'm going to burn his entire operation to the ground, starting with the wedding." "Wedding?" Junso is consolidating power by marrying Carolina, combining the Korean and Italian factions under one banner. The ceremony is in 3 days at the Costa estate. Min-Joon's eyes met mine, and what I saw there sent ice through my veins. "And you and I are going to crash it." The Stronghold's basement training facility smelled like gun oil and sweat. Min-Joon had led me down there at dawn, when the city was still sleeping, and the lake outside churned gray and restless. He'd barely spoken since the insulin revelation, his silence heavy with something I couldn't name. Guilt, maybe, or recalculation. Now he stood behind a table covered in weapons, sorting through them with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. His hair was still damp from the shower, falling across his forehead in a way that made him look younger, less terrifying. "If you're going to survive what's coming," he said without looking at me, "you need to know how to protect yourself." I crossed my arms, the borrowed clothes, tactical pants, and a fitted black shirt, feeling strange against my skin. "I thought that's what your army of guards was for." "My guards can't be everywhere. And if last night taught us anything, it's that nowhere is truly safe." He picked up a compact pistol, checked the chamber with practiced movements. "Besides, I'm not interested in keeping you helpless, just trapped." His eyes flicked to mine, something dark moving through them. "If you want to leave, the door is unlocked." "I told you that." "And my father will continue to receive the best care available." He set the gun down, turned to face me fully. "I meant what I said, Nia. You're not my prisoner. You're my—" "What?" I challenged, moving closer. "Your what, exactly? Your asset? Your informant? Your convenient witness?" "My responsibility." The word came out rough, like it hurt to say. "You saved my life. That creates a debt I take seriously. Even though you were ready to blow my head off 12 hours ago?" A muscle jumped in his jaw. "I was wrong. I don't apologize often, but I'm apologizing now. I should have trusted my instincts about you instead of my paranoia." The admission hung between us, unexpected and vulnerable. This close, I could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the weight he carried in the set of his shoulders. He looked like a man fighting a war on every front, including against himself. "Your instincts told you to trust me?" I asked softly. "From the moment you pressed that note into my hand." His gaze held mine, intense enough to burn. "Everything in my training said you were a threat, but my gut said you were something else entirely." "What?" "A miracle." He said it like a confession, or possibly a curse. I haven't decided which yet. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. I should have stepped back, maintained distance, remembered that this man was a killer who'd held a gun to my chest. But instead I found myself moving forward, closing the gap until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Teach me," I said. "If I'm going to be part of whatever war you're planning, teach me how to survive it." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or desire, or both tangled together. "It won't be easy." I didn't ask for easy. I asked for useful. The corner of his mouth lifted, almost a smile. "Pick up the Glock." I moved to the table, selected the compact pistol he'd been examining. It was heavier than I expected, the metal cold against my palm. Min-Joon circled behind me, and suddenly his chest was against my back, his arms coming around to adjust my grip. "Your stance is wrong," he murmured against my ear. "Feet shoulder-width apart. Bend your knees slightly. You're too rigid." His hands slid down my arms, repositioning them. Every point of contact felt electric, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with the weapon I held. I could feel his breath against my neck, could smell that expensive cologne mixed with something darker, smoke and steel in him. "Now," he continued, his voice dropping lower, "you need to control your breathing. In through your nose, out through your mouth. The shot comes on the exhale." I tried to focus on the target downrange, a paper silhouette that looked disturbingly human. But all I could think about was the solid weight of his body against mine, the way his hands covered my smaller ones, guiding my aim with a gentleness that contradicted everything I knew about him. "Squeeze the trigger," he instructed. "Don't pull. Gentle pressure, like..." The gun kicked in my hands. The report was deafening even with ear protection. The bullet went wide, punching through the concrete wall 2 feet left of the target. "Better than I expected for a first shot," Min-Joon said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Again, we spent the next hour like that. His body pressed against mine, his hands correcting my form, his voice low and patient as he talked me through each shot. By the end, I was hitting the target's center mass more often than not, and my body was humming with an awareness that had nothing to do with adrenaline and everything to do with the man behind me. When he finally stepped back, the absence of his touch felt like a physical loss. "You're a natural," he said, and there was something in his tone that made my pulse quicken. Or maybe just desperate enough to learn fast. Both, probably. I set the gun down carefully, turned to face him. "What now?" "Now we plan." He moved to a wall covered in maps and photographs, his expression shifting back to business. "You said you heard Carolina mention specific dates in that wine cellar. What exactly did she say?" I closed my eyes, pulling up the memory of that moment between the wine bottles. "She said something about il matrimonio anticipado, the wedding being moved up much sooner than planned." Min-Joon's jaw clenched. "That's 3 days from now. They're rushing the ceremony." "Why?" "Because Junso knows I'm alive and hunting him. A wedding creates legitimacy, witnesses, makes him harder to kill without starting an all-out war between the families." He pointed to a satellite image on the wall, a sprawling estate surrounded by gardens. The Costa compound, 40 acres outside the city, private security, probably 100 armed guards the day of the wedding. "So we can't get in." "I didn't say that." His eyes met mine, and they were filled with dangerous promise. "I said it would be difficult. There's a difference." "What are you planning?" Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone, spoke rapid Korean into it. A moment later, one of his men appeared with a laptop. Min-Joon opened it, typed something, then turned the screen toward me. "Guest list." Hundreds of names, organized by family affiliation. I scanned through them, seeing names I recognized from the restaurant. Wealthy patrons, local politicians, people who existed in worlds I'd only ever served food to. "We're going to the wedding," Min-Joon said flatly. "You and me, as guests. That's insane. They'll kill you on sight. Only if they recognize me." He pulled up another window on the laptop. "Disguise options, fake identities. I've been planning for something like this. Multiple backup identities, contacts in the Korean expat community who can vouch for me. We'll attend as a couple, wealthy investors from Seoul looking to establish connections in Chicago." I stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about revenge." He closed the laptop, moved closer, until we were sharing the same air again. "But I need you for this to work. Carolina and Junseo know my face, but they don't know yours well enough to recognize you in formal wear with professional makeup. You'll be my shield, my distraction, all my way into that ceremony. And what happens when we're inside?" His smile was cold as winter. "We destroy them. Expose the pregnancy, reveal Junseo's betrayal of the family codes, turn the Costas and Kangs against each other, and then, in the chaos, we eliminate the threat permanently." The casualness with which he discussed murder should have horrified me, should have sent me running for that unlocked door he kept mentioning, but instead I found myself asking, "What do you need me to do?" "Be brilliant." He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek with unexpected tenderness. "Be brave. Be exactly what you were in that restaurant. Someone willing to save a stranger's life even when it meant risking everything. I'm not brave. I'm terrified. Fear and bravery aren't opposites, Nia. Bravery is being terrified and doing it anyway. His thumb traced my jawline, the touch sending shivers down my spine. You've already proven you have that. We stood there, suspended in a moment that felt both endless and too brief. His hand cupped my face, and I found myself leaning into the touch despite every logical reason not to. If we do this, I whispered. If we go to that wedding and everything goes wrong, then we die together. He said it like a vow. But I don't plan on dying, and I don't plan on letting anything happen to you. Not again. You can't promise that. Watch me. And then he was kissing me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and claiming, his mouth crushing against mine with the force of everything unspoken between us. The fear, the fury, the impossible pull that had existed since the moment our eyes met across that restaurant table. I gasped against his lips, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel. My hands found his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. He backed me against the weapons table, the edge pressing into my hips as he caged me in with his arms. The kiss broke for a moment, just long enough for us to gasp for air, and then his mouth was on my neck, teeth grazing the sensitive skin there. We shouldn't, I managed, even as my head tilted back to give him better access. Probably not. His voice was rough against my throat. One word, and this ends. I should have. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to push him away, to remember that this man was dangerous, that I was trapped in his world with no way out, that whatever this was between us was built on violence and desperation. But I didn't want to stop. The door to the training facility burst open. We sprang apart, both breathing hard. One of Min-Joon's guards stood there, speaking urgent Korean. Min-Joon's expression shifted instantly from desire to deadly focus. What is it? I asked, trying to steady my voice. News from the Costa compound. He was already moving toward the door, his hand finding mine and pulling me with him. Junseo just sent out the official wedding invitations, and he included a personal message for me. What kind of message? His grip on my hand tightened. An invitation to attend. Front row seat to watch him claim everything I've built. He thinks I'm too much of a coward to show up. Or it's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Min-Joon's smile was savage. That's what makes it interesting. The plan was insane. I'd said as much 17 times in the 3 days since Min-Joon had outlined it, and each time he'd responded with the same infuriating calm. Insanity is what makes it work. Now, standing in the back of a Costa family van with my wrists zip-tied and my face carefully bruised with stage makeup, I was starting to think he might be right. Or we were both going to die. One of the two. Remember. Min-Joon's voice came through the tiny earpiece hidden in my ear, so small the Costa guards would never find it during a pat-down. You're terrified. You escaped from me. You have information, and you're willing to trade it for protection. I don't have to act terrified, I muttered under my breath. I actually am terrified. Good. Use it. A pause. Nia, you can do this. I'll be watching the entire time. The van slowed, then stopped. I heard voices outside. Italian, sharp and suspicious. The back doors opened, revealing 2 men in dark suits, weapons visible beneath their jackets. This her? One asked in accented English. The driver, one of Min-Joon's men pretending to be an opportunistic informant, nodded eagerly. Found her trying to buy a bus ticket to Milwaukee. Recognized her from the restaurant. Figured the Costas would pay good money for Kang's little pet. The guard grabbed my arm, hauling me out of the van roughly. I stumbled, letting myself look as beaten down as possible. The Costa compound rose behind them, a massive estate that looked like something transplanted from Tuscany, all golden stone and manicured gardens. Even in late autumn, it was beautiful. Beautiful and full of people who wanted me dead. They dragged me inside through a service entrance, down hallways lined with wedding decorations, white roses, gold ribbons, the trappings of a ceremony that was really just a coronation. We descended stairs into what had to be the basement, the temperature dropping with each step. The interrogation room was exactly what I'd expected. Concrete walls, a single metal chair, a drain in the floor that made my stomach turn. They shoved me into the chair, and one of them produced a knife, cutting the zip ties with casual efficiency. Don't try to run, he said, gesturing to the locked door behind him. There's nowhere to go. Then they left, and I was alone. I counted to 60, then whispered, I'm in. I know. Min-Joon's voice was steady in my ear. I can see you on their security feed. There are 3 guards outside your door, 2 more at the top of the stairs. When Carolina comes, and she will come, remember what we discussed. 20 minutes passed. Then the door opened, and Carolina Costa walked in like she owned the world. She looked different than she had at the restaurant. Harder, colder. Her beauty sharpened into a weapon. The white dress she'd worn then had been replaced by all black, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked like a widow already. Nia Brooks, she said, her accent thicker than I remembered. The little waitress who thought she could play hero. I kept my eyes down, playing broken. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to what? Ruin months of planning? Cost me a fortune in dead soldiers? Make me look like a fool in front of the entire organization? She circled me slowly, predatory. Or did you not mean to fuck Kang Min-Joon? Because my sources say you've been living in his bed for 3 days. The crude accusation made my cheeks burn, but I forced myself to maintain character. He forced me. I was his prisoner. And yet you're here now, free. Or trying to be. Carolina stopped in front of me, tilting my chin up with cold fingers. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me exactly where Min-Joon is hiding. You're going to tell me how many guards he has, what weapons, what plans. And if you do this quickly and honestly, I'll make your death painless. Lie to me, and you'll spend the next 3 days screaming in this basement while my men take turns. The threat was delivered so casually it took my breath away. This was the woman Min-Joon had almost married, the woman who'd smiled and laughed and played the devoted fiancé while planning his murder. He's at the old Geomin warehouse, I whispered. On the south side, by the docks. Carolina's eyes narrowed. How many guards? Maybe 20? I'm not sure. I was locked in a room most of the time. What else? He's planning something for the wedding. I heard him talking on the phone. Something about explosives, about bringing the whole ceremony down. It was exactly the information Min-Joon had told me to feed her. Just specific enough to be believable. Just terrifying enough to make her act rashly. Carolina pulled out her phone, spoke rapid Italian. I caught enough to know she was ordering a strike team to the warehouse coordinates I'd given. The warehouse that Min-Joon had rigged 3 days ago with enough C4 to level a city block. Good girl, Carolina said, patting my cheek like I was a child. You just saved yourself hours of pain. So you'll let me go? Her laugh was musical and cold. Oh, sweetheart. I said I'd make your death painless. I never said I'd let you live. She turned toward the door. Keep her here. After the wedding, when all this is over, you can dispose of her however you like. The door closed behind her. I waited until her footsteps faded, then whispered, She bought it. I know. Min-Joon's voice carried dark satisfaction. She's sending a strike team to the warehouse. 40 men, according to the chatter I'm picking up. That's 40 fewer guards at the wedding. And the warehouse? Will be a crater in about 90 minutes. A pause. You did well, Nia. Better than well. Now comes the hard part. The hard part is still coming? Getting you out of there. The guards think you're secured for the next few hours. That gives us a window. How? Trust me. The next hour was the longest of my life. I sat in that concrete room, listening to the muffled sounds of the estate above me, caterers arriving, musicians setting up, the buzz of hundreds of guests gathering for the wedding of the year. My wrists ached where the zip ties had been, and the stage makeup covering my bruises itched. Then, exactly 73 minutes after Carolina left, the lights went out. Not just in my room, in the entire basement. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in that familiar red glow. I heard shouts above, confusion, the sound of guards mobilizing. The door to my room opened. A figure stood silhouetted against the red light, and for a heart-stopping moment I thought it was one of the guards coming to kill me. Then Min-Joon stepped inside, dressed in guard's uniform he must have stolen, his face partially hidden by a balaclava. Time to go. He grabbed my hand, pulling me into the hallway. Chaos reigned. Guards running past us, shouting in Italian, trying to figure out if this was an attack or just a power failure. Min-Joon moved through them like a ghost, the stolen uniform making him invisible. We were halfway up the stairs when someone grabbed my other arm. Where are you taking the prisoner? The guard's Italian was sharp, suspicious. Min-Joon answered in the same language, something I didn't catch. The guard responded, his grip on my arm tightening. Min-Joon's free hand moved with viper speed, something flashing in the red light. The guard made a wet, choking sound and crumpled. "Run," Min-Joon hissed, and we were sprinting up the stairs, my heart hammering so hard I could taste copper. "Behind us," someone shouted. They'd found the body. We burst out of a service exit into the estate gardens. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and blood. Guests milled around in formal wear, confused by the power outage but not yet alarmed. "Walk," Min-Joon commanded, pulling the balaclava off and stuffing it in his pocket. His face was calm, controlled, just another guest annoyed by the disruption. I matched his pace, trying to look like I belonged among the wealthy elite despite my disheveled appearance. We were 20 feet from the perimeter wall when the warehouse exploded. The sound rolled across the city like thunder, a deep boom that made the ground tremble. Everyone stopped, turning toward the horizon where a pillar of smoke and flame rose into the darkening sky. Screams erupted from inside the estate. Not fear, but fury, as the Costas realized what had happened. "That's our cue," Min-Joon said. And then we were running again, this time openly, as alarm bells began to shriek through the compound. We cleared the wall using a service ladder, dropped into the forest beyond, and sprinted through the trees until my lungs burned. An SUV waited exactly where Min-Joon had said it would, engine running, driver ready. We collapsed into the back seat as the vehicle took off, tires spitting gravel. Only when the estate was miles behind us did I finally let myself breathe. "You're insane," I gasped. That was insane, but it worked. Min-Joon was grinning, actually grinning, his eyes bright with adrenaline and triumph. 40 of their best soldiers gone, Carolina panicking, Junso scrambling to secure the wedding with a depleted force. We just won the first battle. This was just the first battle? The war ends tomorrow. At the ceremony, he turned to me, and his expression softened slightly. "You were incredible in there. The fear, the information drop, the timing, perfect. I wasn't acting. I really was terrified." "I know," he reached over, his hand finding mine. "But you did it anyway. That's what courage looks like." Our fingers intertwined, and suddenly the adrenaline in my veins transformed into something else entirely. We'd just escaped death together, had burned 40 of our enemies alive, were hurtling toward a confrontation that would probably kill us both. And all I could think about was how his hand felt in mine, how his eyes looked in the dying light, how close we'd come to losing this, whatever this was between us. "Min-Joon," I started, but he leaned forward, capturing my lips in a kiss that tasted like gunpowder and victory and desperation. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "After tomorrow, if we survive, I'm going to tell you things I've never told anyone. But tonight, I just want—" I know. And I did. I wanted the same thing. "Take me home. Home is a concrete fortress. I don't care. Take me there anyway." The stronghold felt different when we returned. Less like a prison and more like a sanctuary. Or maybe I was different. Maybe watching a warehouse full of enemies burn had changed something fundamental in me, had pushed me past the point of return into whatever darkness Min-Joon inhabited. He led me upstairs. Not to the guest room I'd been using, but to his own suite. I'd never been inside before. It was exactly what I'd expected. Minimalist, functional, dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. But there were small personal touches I hadn't anticipated. Books in Korean, stacked on a nightstand, a photo of an older woman on the dresser, a half-finished game of Go on a low table. "My mother," Min-Joon said, noticing me looking at the photograph. "She died when I was 14, cancer." I moved closer to study the image. She was beautiful, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Nothing like the violent world her son inhabited. "I'm sorry. She was the only person who ever believed I could be something other than my father's weapon." He stood beside me, staring at the photograph like it held answers to questions he'd stopped asking. After she died, I stopped believing it too. The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. "Is that why you do this? The violence, the empire, because you think that's all you can be?" "I do this because I'm good at it. Because it's what I was trained for from the moment I could walk." He turned to me, his expression raw in a way I'd never seen. But you make me wonder if there could be something else. Min-Joon, don't. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair. Don't tell me I can change, that I can walk away from this life. We both know that's not true. Men like me don't get redemption. We just try to survive long enough to make sure the people we care about do. Is that what I am? Someone you care about? His eyes met mine, and what I saw there stole my breath. You're the first person in 20 years who looked at me and saw something worth saving. So yes, Nia, you're someone I care about. Desperately. Dangerously. The admission hung between us, heavy with implications. Tomorrow we were walking into a wedding that was really an execution. Tomorrow we might die. Tomorrow might be all we had. So I closed the distance between us and kissed him. This time it wasn't desperate or claiming. It was slow, deliberate, a conscious choice to let this happen. His hands came up to cup my face, gentle despite their capacity for violence. I pressed closer, feeling the hard lines of his body against mine, and something in my chest cracked open. Nia, he murmured against my mouth. If we do this, there's no going back. I don't want to go back. He pulled away slightly, his eyes searching mine. You understand what you're saying, what tomorrow means. If we survive, you'll be bound to me, to this world, to... I know. I pressed my fingers against his lips, silencing him. I know what I'm choosing. I'm choosing you. Concrete fortress, dangerous world, and all. Something shifted in his expression. Wonder, maybe, or disbelief, that anyone would choose this life willingly. Then he was kissing me again, deeper now, backing me toward the bed with deliberate intent. We shed clothes slowly, giving each other time to change our minds, but neither of us did. His hands mapped my body like he was memorizing every curve, every scar, every imperfection. I did the same, tracing the old wounds that decorated his skin. Bullet grazes, knife cuts, the physical history of a violent life. You're beautiful, he whispered, and there was reverence in his voice that made me believe him. When he finally moved over me, his weight pressing me into expensive sheets, everything else fell away. The fear, the anger, the impossible situation we were trapped in. There was only this, his body against mine, his breath mixing with mine, the feeling of being claimed and claiming in return. It wasn't gentle. Neither of us needed gentle. It was fierce and desperate. A taking and giving that left us both gasping. He moved inside me like he was trying to brand himself on my soul, and I met him thrust for thrust, nails digging into his shoulders hard enough to leave marks. Mine, he growled against my throat, and I should have protested the possessiveness, should have reminded him that I wasn't property to be owned, but instead I gasped, yours, and meant it. When we finally shattered together, it felt like falling and flying simultaneously. He collapsed beside me, pulling me against his chest, and we lay there in the darkness, listening to the lake whisper against the shore. Tomorrow, he said quietly, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. I'm sending a package to Junso. I propped myself up on one elbow, looking down at him. What kind of package? His smile was cold. Remember the priest who was supposed to officiate the wedding? The corrupt Father Michaels who blessed mob weddings for the right price? Vaguely. I had him picked up 3 hours ago. He's been persuaded to reconsider his career choices. Min-Joon's expression was carved from ice. I'm sending Junso his hand. His right hand, specifically, wearing my mother's wedding ring. The casual brutality of it should have horrified me, should have sent me scrambling from the bed, from this man, from the monstrous world he inhabited. Instead, I asked, why your mother's ring? Because Junso's mother, my father's first wife, died in childbirth. My mother raised him as her own son until my father exiled him. She loved that boy like he was hers. Min-Joon's voice roughened, and he repaid that love by trying to destroy everything she built, everyone she protected. The ring is a message. You betrayed family. This is what happens to those who betray family. I lay back down, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. You really are a monster, aren't you? Yes. He said it without hesitation, without shame. But I'm your monster now. That should terrify me. Does it? I thought about it. Really thought about what I'd become in the past 4 days. The girl who'd served appetizers at the Gilded Lotus wouldn't have recognized the woman lying here, complicit in torture and murder, planning to crash a wedding that would end in bloodshed. But that girl had also watched her father slowly die because she couldn't afford proper treatment. That girl had been invisible, powerless, trapped in a life where she served the world and got nothing in return. This woman had power, had choices, had a dangerous man who'd moved heaven and earth to keep her father alive, who'd trained her to fight, who'd looked at her like she was precious even when she was covered in bruises and stage makeup. "No," I said finally. "It doesn't terrify me. Not anymore." His arms tightened around me. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we end this." I closed my eyes, but sleep was elusive. Images kept flickering through my mind. Carolina's cold smile, the warehouse exploding, Junso's face in the photographs Min-Joon had shown me. The man looked like his half-brother but crueler, hunger carved into every feature. "Min-Joon?" I whispered into the darkness. What happens if we fail tomorrow?" "We won't. But if we do?" A long pause. Then I'll make sure you survive, whatever it costs." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "Sleep, Nia. Tomorrow we change the world." I finally drifted off, wrapped in his arms, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat counting down the hours until dawn. The dress Min-Joon had waiting for me was a work of art. Midnight blue silk that hugged my curves, with long sleeves and a neckline that was elegant but not conservative. It looked innocent. It was anything but. "Ballistic weave sewn into the bodice," he explained, adjusting the fabric at my shoulders. "It won't stop a direct shot, but it'll slow a bullet enough to keep it from being immediately fatal." I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Professional makeup transformed my face. Dramatic eyes, bold lips, cheekbones highlighted until I looked like someone who belonged among Chicago's elite. My hair was swept up in an elegant twist, revealing the diamond earrings Min-Joon had given me. They weren't just jewelry. They contained microtransmitters so his team could track my location inside the estate. "I look like someone else," I said. "You look like a queen." He appeared behind me in the mirror, devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit. His own disguise was minimal but effective, colored contacts turning his dark eyes hazel, his hair styled differently, a fake scar on his jaw. "Carolina and Junso have only seen you disheveled and terrified. This version of you, they won't recognize until it's too late." A knock at the door. One of Min-Joon's men entered, carrying a tablet. When Min-Joon turned the screen toward me, I saw what was on it and had to swallow hard against nausea. The photo of the severed hand looked waxy, unreal. The ring on its third finger gleamed, a simple gold band with Korean characters engraved inside. "It's already been delivered," the man said in English for my benefit. "Junso received it an hour ago." "Good." Min-Joon closed the box with clinical detachment. "Then he knows I'm coming. The question is whether his arrogance will let him believe I'd be stupid enough to actually show up." "What if he's evacuated the wedding?" I asked. "He won't. That would show weakness, fear. And Junso's fatal flaw has always been his pride." Min-Joon turned to me, his expression serious. "Once we're inside, stay close. Don't drink anything offered to you. Don't eat anything. Don't let anyone separate us. And if things go wrong," he pulled out a small pistol. Elegant, compact, deadly. "This fits in that hidden pocket we built into your dress. If anyone threatens you, don't hesitate. Shoot first, apologize never." The weight of the weapon settled against my hip, cold and heavy with implication. I was really doing this, walking into a building full of enemies, armed with a gun and a prayer, trusting a man I'd known for less than a week. The drive to the Costa estate felt surreal. We passed through security checkpoints easily, Min-Joon's false identity holding up under scrutiny, our names on the guest list thanks to his contacts in the Korean business community. No one looked at us twice. The ceremony was set up in the estate's grand ballroom, hundreds of chairs facing an altar decorated with white roses. Guests mingled in the foyer. Expensive suits, designer dresses, the beautiful people who made the world spin through money and violence. I spotted Carolina immediately. She stood near the entrance to the ballroom, greeting guests, radiant in a gown that shimmered like it belonged to royalty, rather than a traitor. When her eyes passed over me, there was no recognition, just a polite smile, a slight nod, the casual dismissal of someone who didn't matter. "She doesn't see you," Min-Joon murmured against my ear. "Well done." We took our seats 6 rows back, close enough to see, but not so close we'd be immediately noticeable. The ceremony began right on time, processional music swelling as bridesmaids made their way down the aisle. Then Carolina appeared, and the room collectively held its breath. She looked like a fairy tale, all white silk and diamonds, her smile radiant and false. Junso waited at the altar, and seeing him in person made my skin crawl. He had Min-Joon's eyes. Or Min-Joon had his, I supposed. But where Min-Joon's gaze held depth and damage, Junseo's held only hunger. He looked at Carolina like she was a crown he was about to place on his head. The priest, a replacement for Father Michael's, obviously, began the ceremony. Standard words about love and commitment and forever, each one ringing hollow in this space where marriage was just another business transaction. Min-Joon's hand found mine, his grip tight. "Almost time," he whispered. "For what?" Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, hit send. The screens positioned around the ballroom, meant to show close-ups of the happy couple, suddenly flickered. Then they went black. Then they came back on, but not with the wedding. Carolina's voice filled the ballroom, speaking Italian through the sound system. "Si è al tavolo uno, vicino al vetro." The recording from the wine cellar. Min-Joon had somehow obtained it. From the restaurant security system maybe, or from his own surveillance. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that everyone in this room could now hear Carolina confirming the hit on Min-Joon. The screens showed security footage from the Gilded Lotus. Time-stamped, indisputable. Carolina on her phone. Carolina entering the restaurant's back office, where the hit team was staged. Carolina smiling at Min-Joon across the table while her assassins moved into position. Chaos erupted. Guests surged to their feet, shouting. The Costa family elders looked murderous. Junseo's face had gone white, then red, fury twisting his features. "Who did this?" he roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Who dares?" "I do." Min-Joon stood, and the entire ballroom fell silent. He reached up, removed the colored contacts in a smooth motion, revealing his true eyes. "Hello, brother. Did you miss me?" The room exploded. Costa soldiers reached for weapons. Korean enforcers positioned throughout the ballroom did the same. Guests screamed and scrambled for exits, and Min-Joon walked calmly down the aisle toward the altar, his hand still holding mine, pulling me with him. "You're dead," Junseo snarled. "I watched the warehouse explode. I counted the bodies." "You counted the bodies I wanted you to count." Min-Joon stopped 10 feet from the altar, utterly fearless despite being surrounded by dozens of armed men. "Did you really think I'd be stupid enough to hide where your little spy could find me?" Carolina's face had gone chalk white. "Min, I can explain. Can you explain the pregnancy test in your purse showing you're 4 months along?" Min-Joon pulled out a piece of paper. "Medical records," I realized. "Can you explain that genetic testing proves the child is Junseo's? That you've been sleeping with my brother for 6 months while planning our wedding?" The Costa family elders turned on Carolina as one, their expressions murderous. In their world, this level of betrayal demanded blood. "The wedding is a sham," Min-Joon continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Junseo has been dead to the Kang family for 5 years. He has no claim to our territory, our businesses, our name. This marriage would have been invalid from the start. A bastard and a whore trying to steal an empire through fraud." Junseo finally moved, pulling a gun from inside his jacket, but he didn't point it at Min-Joon. He pointed it at me. "Let's see how brave you are when your little pet is bleeding out," he snarled. Time slowed. I saw Min-Joon's expression shift from controlled fury to raw terror. Saw him start to move, to put himself between me and the gun. Saw Carolina's hand reaching for something hidden in her bouquet, and I remembered the weapon hidden in my dress. I moved on pure instinct, my hand finding the pistol, pulling it free, raising it in one smooth motion that Min-Joon had drilled into me over hours in the training room. 3 things happened simultaneously. Junseo fired. I fired. The room erupted into warfare. The impact hit me in the chest, exactly where Min-Joon had sewn the ballistic weave. It felt like being kicked by a horse, knocking the air from my lungs. But the bullet didn't penetrate. I stayed on my feet. Junseo wasn't so lucky. My shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, his gun clattering away. Then chaos consumed everything. The Costa soldiers and Kang enforcers opened fire on each other. The wedding guests stampeding for exits, screams and gunshots creating a symphony of violence. Min-Joon grabbed me, pulling me behind a marble column as bullets tore through the space we'd been standing. "You shot him," he said, and there was wonder in his voice. You actually shot him. You told me not to hesitate. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling the bruise already forming beneath the dress. Is it always going to hurt this much? Probably. He leaned around the column, returned fire, dropping a Costa soldier who'd gotten too close. We need to move. The exit plan. Carolina appeared from nowhere, a gun in her hand, her wedding dress torn and splattered with blood that wasn't hers. Her face was a mask of fury and desperation. You ruined everything, she hissed at me. You were supposed to die in that basement. You were supposed to be nothing. I was never nothing. The words came out steady, certain. I was just invisible. There's a difference. She raised the gun, pointing it at my face. This time there was no ballistic weave to protect me, no time for Min-Joon to intervene, no last-minute miracle, so I didn't wait for one. I threw myself forward, inside her guard, grabbing her wrist and forcing the gun upward. It discharged, the shot going wild. We struggled, her strength surprising, her desperation making her dangerous. My hand found the weapon in her bouquet. A knife, small and sharp, and I didn't hesitate. I just survived. The blade slid between her ribs with horrifying ease. Her eyes went wide, shocked, and she stumbled back. The gun fell from her hand, clattering on marble. You, she gasped, blood spreading across the white silk of her wedding dress like a red flower blooming. You're just a waitress. I was a waitress. I stepped back, watching her crumple to the floor. Now I'm something else. Min-Joon appeared beside me, his hand finding mine. We need to go, now. The Costa soldiers were in full retreat, the Kang enforcers systematically eliminating the remaining threats. Junseo lay motionless where he'd fallen, blood pooling beneath him. Whether he was dead or dying, I couldn't tell. Min-Joon led me through the chaos, his body constantly positioned between me and any potential threats. We burst out into the gardens where the SUV waited, engine running. His men provided covering fire as we ran, bullets tearing through the carefully manicured roses. We made it to the vehicle, tumbled inside, and the driver took off before the door was even closed. Behind us, the Costa estate burned. Whether from fires started in the chaos or deliberately set, I didn't know. Only when we were miles away did I finally let myself breathe. You killed her, Min-Joon said quietly. Carolina, you killed her yourself. Yes. I stared at my hands, expecting to see blood but finding only torn silk from her bouquet. I killed her. How do you feel? I waited for the guilt, the horror, the crushing weight of having ended a human life. But all I felt was tired, satisfied, free, like I survived, I said finally. He pulled me against him, and I buried my face in his chest, letting the adrenaline finally crash. We'd done it. We'd walked into the heart of enemy territory, exposed the betrayal, eliminated the threats. We'd survived. Together. What happens now? I asked against his shirt. Now, we rebuild. His arms tightened around me. The Kang Empire is mine again. The Costas are in chaos without Carolina, or their alliance with Junseo. And you, what about me? He pulled back, cupping my face in his hands. You're the queen of this empire now, if you want to be. My partner, my equal. Not my prisoner or my responsibility, but my choice, if you'll have me. I looked into his dark eyes. No longer cold, but warm with something that looked dangerously like love. What about my father? Has the best medical care money can buy for the rest of his life. And you never have to work another day unless you want to. And if I want to, then work, build something, change the world. He smiled. Just do it beside me. Outside, Chicago rolled past the windows. The city we'd just set on fire. The world we'd claimed through blood and violence. It should have felt wrong. It should have felt like a mistake. Instead, it felt like coming home. Yes, I said, and kissed him. I'll have you. Monster and all. Good. He kissed me back, deep and claiming, because I'm never letting you go. 3 months later, my father woke up from his coma. The doctors called it a miracle. Min-Joon called it expensive medicine and better equipment. I called it grace. I was sitting beside his bed when his eyes opened, holding his hand like I'd done 100 times before. But this time, his fingers squeezed back. Nia, he whispered, his voice rough from disuse. Where am I? Safe. I smiled through tears. You're safe, Daddy. Everything's going to be okay. And for the first time in years, I actually believed it. The stronghold by the lake was no longer just Min-Joon's fortress. It was ours. We'd made it a home. Not soft or conventional, but ours nonetheless. The concrete walls were still gray, but I'd added touches of color. Plants that somehow survived the harsh lake wind. Books that we read together on quiet evenings. The Go game we still hadn't finished. My father lived in the East Wing, his suite equipped with everything he needed to recover. Min-Joon visited him often, the two of them playing chess while I watched. A strange surrogate family forged from violence and survival. The Kang Empire continued, but differently. Min-Joon was working to legitimize the businesses, to phase out the worst of the violence. It would take years, maybe decades. Some things would never be legal or moral, but we were trying. That had to count for something. On a cold December night, exactly 1 year after the wedding that became a massacre, Min-Joon found me standing by the windows, watching snow fall over the frozen lake. "Regretting your choice?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Never. Not even a little?" I turned in his embrace, looking up at the man who'd started as a stranger across a restaurant table and become the center of my world. "You gave me my father back. You gave me power when I had none. You made me visible when the world ignored me. I also made you a killer." "No." I pressed my hand against his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath my palm. "You made me a survivor. There's a difference." He kissed me then, soft and deep, and outside the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white, hiding the blood, making everything look clean and new. It was an illusion, of course. Underneath, the violence remained. The Empire, the enemies who would always be circling, looking for weakness, but we'd face them together. Monster and waitress, killer and survivor, king and queen of a brutal empire built on concrete and winter wind, and a single note slipped across a restaurant table that changed everything. Outside, the city slept. Inside, we ruled. And I'd never felt more alive.